Everybody in, nobody out. Everybody in.
Nobody out.
Everybody in.
Nobody out.
Everybody in.
Nobody out.
Everybody in.
Nobody out.
Thank you guys so much.
Welcome to the Up and Up. We have a really exciting show for you today. We were fortunate enough to be able to get to Washington, D.C. for the March for Medicare for All. And we want to share with you some of the footage that we've been able to catch from that event. Not only footage of people who are participating in the event, but also people who were, we kind of pulled off to the side and got some interviews with activists that were there to really show their support. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my Real Progressives press crew team. I have John Cena. Hey. And Roxanna Fuentes.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm so excited. I mean, I wish that I were actually with you because we had so much fun when we were actually together in DC.
Yes.
But I'm very happy to be with you guys virtually today. So thank you for coming to the show.
Awesome. Thanks
for having us. I feel like a celebrity, man. I'm just used to seeing these shows come out, and I was invited to come on. It's like all my dreams are coming true. So
exactly. Well, exactly, because John's usually behind the scenes and he's usually doing all that kind of stuff that people don't see, right? So like when we asked to support
stuff.
Exactly. So when we asked to support Real Progressives, we're not talking about like, just money for nothing. We're talking about like supporting people who are behind the scenes. Not to say that John gets paid because he doesn't, but I'm just saying. These are a lot of things that, people don't necessarily think goes into this type of work, right? Man, okay. So it's been about a week. And so we're kind of reminiscing on our experiences with Medicare for All. And the one that really, just to start it off, really, like right off the bat, what really sticks out in my mind is like this one guy who showed up. And this is like before anything was happening, right? So this is like, we're all just kind of hanging out. We figure we have like half an hour until everything starts up. And so like as the RP press crew, we're like, okay, making sure that we have our sound set and all these kind of things, setting up our table and that kind of stuff or whatever. This guy shows up completely out of the blue and starts ranting about how he is from what I heard is he's more of an activist than anyone else, and he's been doing this for all this time, and so apparently we're stepping on his toes by supporting the same thing that he's supporting.
Hey, yo, check it out. Yo, I came out for Force on day one. I'm an activist for 20 years in the game. Do not think you will stop me, none of y'all. None of y'all, I am here. I'm fucking here. Get out of here. Yeah, try to fucking stop me, man. This event is bullshit. Hey, man. Film me, man. Thank you. Film the vote. I'm the first one in the nation to film my visit to AOC's office. I was the one who worked against Yang. Look me up. I got cards for you. We need real activists. I got Tim Black. I defended Tim Black against Jimmy Dore. But, I also like Jimmy Dore, too. Sharif, what's up, baby? Whatever, man. You ain't muscling me the fuck out of here. Yeah, go ahead. Suppress me, man. Call the cops on me, man. I'm a real fucking activist. You're gonna drop me out. Shut up, voice of the fucking people. That's me. I am the voice of the people.
So I don't know. What did you guys think of that?
Well, I'll tell you. Go ahead, Roxanna.
I was just thinking his ego got a little hurt, because he, I guess, wasn't being a part of it. So, I guess that's really the main thing. His ego got a little hurt because he wasn't part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know who this guy is.
John, you know the whole story.
Yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Again, I think some people at RP know of this guy through some, activist circles. His name is Ed Lee. And like as we were setting up, Joy had said to me that there might be this guy who was working with them at the beginning of the organizing of the march, and apparently some stuff happened. They parted ways, and he's a bit disgruntled about it, and he might show up and cause a scene. Like it was a possibility, and sure enough, within 20 minutes, this guy's screaming about how he's the activist. He's done all the work,
And we're fake. And
it's-
everybody else is fake.
yeah, everybody else is fake and stuff. And I mean, activism is a thankless job. I get it. The frustration sometimes, and things don't work out, and when you're putting your a lot of work into something, and there's variables, but again, it was just just seemed like a disgruntled ex-activist just kind of making a scene, and the cops came and kind of hauled him away, but kind of let him stick around. So I mean, just for everybody who sees the video, he wasn't hurt. He continued ranting and raving from farther away in the park, but
that's really interesting, because I saw you, John. I mean, I saw you standing up to him, and so to me, like from my perspective, I mean, I understand. I guess kind of going into it, there were certain people who were a little bit concerned for one reason or another, or were adversarial for one reason or another. And it's like, okay, I understand that, but I understand whatever perspectives, but not to the point where I don't think you should come and participate. But at the same time, having somebody who's going to stand up and really make like a real big stink about, I guess, from what I heard from him, it was mostly, I'm more of an activist than you are.
Yeah.
And I'm, I've been doing this, and this is this thing. And I think at the end of the day, we're a movement. It's a movement. It's not about your ego. Like you, Roxanna, said, I mean, it's not about your ego. It's not about where you think that you need to, what position or what you need to be painted in. It's about, this is something that
Already the cause.
right, exactly. And you fight for people that you don't know. You don't know, and you may never meet, and you may never see,
Right.
and that wasn't the first time in the organizing of this march that people tried to undermine it, because I think that's what it was. It was just like, I'm going to disrupt this, and and it happened before, leading up to this. People were trying to undermine the organizing and stuff, and I don't know. It sucks, but that's something we have to deal with. When we're putting this stuff together, there's always going to be resistance, and
yeah.
But again, it turned out well.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a big hindrance, just more of like some funny B-roll stuff for us to.
I know. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting enough to include in this show. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and John, you kind of caught on this and touched on this before we started, when we were kind of behind the scenes, right? Is this conversation of someone who is coming there advocating for state by state position, right? And this is someone who's coming from DC. And it's interesting to think about that. As we were walking around, of course, we saw a lot of signs for DC statehood, right? But as it stands, DC does not actually have statehood. So when we talk about doing it state by state, I think there are a lot of reasons why we can, a lot of things that we can come up with to kind of say that doesn't necessarily get the job done, and maybe that's not the best tactic for us to be looking at as something to put all of our effort into going forward. But also the fact that, for example, I mean, people who are activists in DC, how are they going to go state by state? They're never going to go state by state because they don't have statehood in the first place. And take it from there, John, because you explained it really well.
So yeah, again, when we were walking around DC, I kept seeing the statehood for DC yard signs, and we started the conversation, and Jodi let me know that they don't have like basically a state legislature to push laws through and stuff on basically the local level, to where they're dependent on Congress passing federal laws. And And it just clicked at some point that how ironic it was that we're in Washington, D.C. fighting for healthcare, and there's in some of the other events like the LA event, it seemed like the California state healthcare activists wanted to kind of take that over and make that the main message is, hey, let's get healthcare for California people. And it's like, it just doesn't, in Washington, D.C., they're dependent on federal law to get like healthcare for all. So it was a weird intersection of that state versus federal kind of healthcare brouhaha going on. And it was like we were right in the heart of it. And this is almost another of the many, like you said, examples. I mean, the funding math not adding up being the main one, but I mean, it's not a state, so they can't really run it through the state legislature. So yeah, it was cool. It was interesting to think about. And
yeah, Roxanna, what's your take on that? So, I mean, what were your observations as far as, when we were, I don't know, as far as all this happening?
Well, definitely, if they want to have somebody represent them, they really don't have a representation when it comes to their voices being heard and having a representative to vote on such things like Medicare for all.
Yeah.
So important.
And just as a quick side note, they do have I believe it's called a shadow representative, and we met him. It was
right.
Who doesn't actually have an influential vote. So as far as when votes happen and you tally up, okay, this is who voted
in the Senate and the House, is his vote counted or right?
I think what it is they have a representative in the House of Representatives who is a non-voting member, right? And then in the Senate, they don't have any representation at all. And what's really interesting about that is to see, I mean, of course, it's, it's the same thing, right? So we watched as we were going through I'm blanking on it now, but it was for President Trump and to impeachment. As we were going through the impeachment trials and things like that, there was this woman who is from the Virgin Islands. I'm sorry that I can't remember her name right now, but she was speaking from the Virgin Islands, and she was asking these questions alongside, the other representatives and things like that. Yet she was a non-voting member, because she's from the Virgin Islands, and that's not considered a state, right? It's the same idea like with Washington, D.C., but it's in the it's like literally within the country, and yet these people do not have a representative vote. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's kind of like Puerto Rico, it's a territory.
Right.
So are the Virgin Islands, they're a territory. So we don't have, we can't vote for the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
We can vote for having a guest represent us, but we can vote in the primaries, but we can't vote to elect the president.
Which is so crazy. If you're going to be dependent, if your laws and your legislation is going to be dependent on someone, on this representative legislator, it's amazing that you would not be represented by that person. Now, of course, in Puerto Rico, that's a very different conversation. And the reason I say it's a very different conversation is because a lot of people who are in Puerto Rico don't necessarily want statehood. Right. And so that's a nuanced conversation that we can get into another day. I think, exactly. I think that it's a much more larger conversation that we couldn't do justice today. And
definitely.
I don't want. Yeah, totally. So what I thought was really amazing, for one thing, about the March for Medicare for All was people who are bringing their stories and really bringing it home, right? A lot of times I think we look at Medicare for all, we look at healthcare, right? And we think, okay, I'm good. I'm covered by my work insurance, or I'm covered by whatever insurance I'm covered by, and I'm good, until you realize that you need it. And so one of the amazing speakers that we had on was actually Cheryl Van Epps. She's from Vermont, which, I'm from New Hampshire. So she's, right, hop, skip, and a jump over here. but I never met her until we went to DC, which is great. She's an amazing person. And just to kind of talk about the personal stories, and I'm wondering, like, how did that hit you guys? Listening to someone's really, oh man, I mean, just really going through the
Heartbreaking story.
Yeah.
9 years ago, I played a co-ed floor hockey game. My teammate collided into me head to head. Felt like a blow of a sledgehammer. Urgent care told me you could have lost your eye and scheduled a surgery right away. For some reason, they considered me ready for release. They gave me this barf bin and wheeled me out the door. So after performing reconstructive bone surgery, drilling into my skull and damaging the cranial nerve, they sent me home like that.
That ain't right. It's not right. Shame.
It's our healthcare system.
According to teletracking's dashboard, they needed to clear that bed for patient flow efficiency. From this patient's perspective, they performed an act of violence on my body akin to torture. A week later, an x-ray revealed the physical force from my dry heaves displaced the metal plate, so they had to go in a second time. So in their efforts to save the hospital money, it cost them 2 additional surgeries. 5 years passed before my diagnosis of the nerve pain, trigeminal neuralgia, AKA suicide disease. Not by my doctors, but by my dentist. They made me jump through hoops to get medical marijuana, which led to adult psychiatric diagnosis of PTSD. Because of the length of time that had passed after my accident until received adequate care, my top athletic health had deteriorated to suffering complex mental health issues and chronic nerve pain. State health agencies admit we don't staff enough providers like case managers to cover all the needs of the patients. Fact is, our states are desperate for federal funding to fill those deficiencies. If they listened to us brain injury survivors, they'd hear many of us end up unemployed, incarcerated, unhoused, or dead by suicide. It's as if we do not exist. Our outcomes don't matter. Today, quality of care is defined by how efficiently care is delivered. Corporations now define it. Please advocate for us patients by taking back the definition of quality care. We're ignoring the magnitude of harm the system is doing. Hospital supervisors admit the patient safety data they collect only represent the tip of the iceberg. Before COVID, the 3rd most common cause of death in the US was medical error. Deconstruct and redesign the system so it serves patients, not corporations. The healthcare revolution is on. Patients lead the way.
Yeah, it made me a little teary-eyed, to know, all that she went through with her brain injury and how she was treated and how, the bureaucracy of the healthcare system and her not giving, I guess, priority and voice as to what would be best for her and not being treated, I guess, fairly, I would say. Or
Yeah.
with importance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Cheryl's great. She's a lot of people in her position, the stuff she went through, might have, made other decisions like
Yeah.
to not deal with that, to off themselves or, just go die somewhere because, but she came back and like told her story and she's trying to advocate for other people so they don't have to go through it. And I think that's one of the big things with like our healthcare system that a lot of people know about, but they don't share with other people is how dysfunctional it is and how, treated like a number, not really a person you are. And, but it's sometimes it's maybe a little embarrassing or too personal or painful to share that a lot of people don't share their experiences and feel like they're alone in this system, you know, and to have
Right.
the courage to come out and really do what Cheryl did, it was very powerful, but also I think it gives a lot of hope to people that, you know, are living these situations, you know, by themselves and feel like they're alone and they don't have anywhere to turn because our healthcare system is so horrible.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people, yeah, go on that, but I think you're absolutely right, and I just want to thank Cheryl because she's absolutely amazing, and not only speaking up and telling her story, but also coming down to DC and helping out in any way that she could. I mean, she's
Yeah, she was down at the RP table, man, handing out
yeah,
literature and like pushing MMP stuff, man.
that's
She was a
right.
trooper. She was going all day long and showed up at the
Yes.
blockade rally the next day, you know, helping out there. That was
Yep.
big
That
love
was
to Cheryl,
awesome.
man. She's a trooper in every sense of the word.
Yep. Now,
Yeah.
one person who I had never met before, and I was very excited to meet him there. And so, because I guess I want to kind of like juxtapose between the idea of, you know, and these are things that we've covered on the Up and Up in the past before too, which I think is kind of cool, right? Is like drawing on people's stories because you have to, it's key to connecting with people on an individual level, right? So like even people who don't necessarily understand the extent of the harm or the damage that can be done can connect with someone who has gone through that situation, maybe started out in the same situation, and yet somehow they ended up in this or whatever. It doesn't matter. Stories can connect in so many ways. It's absolutely amazing. Now, but at the same time, there's also this aspect of humor. And really, I mean, what it brings up to me, like reminds me of my interview with Krish, right? And so like we were having this conversation, Krish Mohan came on the show and we were having this conversation. And what I had really been thinking about at the time was this idea of drawing out the absurdity, right? You know, and so it's almost, it's like you're making light of something that should not, I mean, really, I guess I should not say like should not be, but something that is dark in itself, like something that is not funny in itself, like it's not inherently a humorous thing, and yet you draw out the absurdity of that thing and then you highlight it because it is absolutely, it's just insane. It's so insane that it's funny. It's so insane that you have to laugh, right? That it's so ridiculous that there are these things that we do, right? And Lee Camp was one of those people. I was really excited I got to actually meet him this time, but also he did an amazing, amazing speech. And I think that that is really what he does so well, is to kind of draw out these absurdities that we don't necessarily, like we look around and we don't necessarily acknowledge them or laugh at them or
I think they had me on. They asked me to speak here to have a little unbiased, you know, make sure this march, this rally was unbiased, give both points of view. I am a huge supporter of our healthcare system. I think it's just, it's awesome, all right? And I'm going to go through some of the reasons that it's one of the best healthcare systems in the world. First of all, we are the only developed country without healthcare for our citizens. How unique does that make us? It gives us personality. It's incredible. Also, it serves the fact that we don't have healthcare for our own citizens. It serves as a threat to our adversaries. They know we will harm them because we don't even give a fuck about our own people. Yeah, how badass is that? You don't want to mess with that guy. You don't want to mess with that guy. Also, another good thing about our healthcare, it gets people locked into medical debt for a good portion of their lives, all right? And that means you end up in jobs you hate, not doing what you want with your life, all right? And why is that good? Because there are too many fucking happy people around, all right? We need unhappy people. You ever met a happy person? They're the worst, okay? They're jumping around, hugging people. It's awful. So by locking people into medical debt, you force them to have miserable lives, and I think we can all agree that is a good thing. All right. Another great thing, it makes doctors hate being doctors. because they don't get to actually help people. They don't get to do what it was that they got into that, many of them got into that profession to do. They don't get to actually help people, which is great because I hate doctors, all right? And I want them to suffer. So they should not enjoy their jobs. Also, medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country. The #1 cause. If we got rid of that, you know what would be the #1 cause of bankruptcy? Divorce. And how sick are you to want divorce to be the #1 cause of bankruptcy? You people are terrible. You're disgusting. You're disgusting. Oh, shit, wrong speech. I'm sorry. Sorry. I just remembered I'm totally opposed to this disgusting, revolting, putrid dumpster fire of a system we have in this country. This capitalist shit show that just exploits people's health to enrich a tiny number of individuals, a tiny number of people. Profit should have nothing to do with whether you can treat your diabetes. Profit should have nothing to do with whether your mother gets her cancer treatments. Profit should have nothing to do with whether someone survives COVID. Profit should have nothing to do with whether your grandfather gets his hip replaced. Profit should not be anywhere in our healthcare system. A for-profit healthcare system, and the fact that many people in this country even think this is okay, even think this is acceptable, is the result of long-term social engineering. It is a brain parasite that people think that this is even moderately okay to treat human beings like this. And we need to cure that brain parasite. That's what you're doing here today. You're helping wake people up to how fucked up this system is. That's what you're doing. And we can do it. We can cure this brain parasite if we just raise enough money for the copay.
The whole that's like George Carlin, man. They highlight the absurdities, and it's like just the contradiction and the ridiculousness of our reality of the stuff we're taught that's like normal, and that's the way it is. It's like humorous in itself. I mean, it's almost a joke, like our healthcare system, to think that, you know, we spend, you know, $1 trillion a year on, you know, tanks and jets and stuff, but somehow we still let 500,000 people go bankrupt and let 50,000 die because they can't get the basic services and medicine that we have. It's and he highlighted that, you know, in a way, you know, the comic mind can. Yeah. It was good.
Roxanna, what do you think?
Well, I think he did a really good job, you know, bringing out the absurdities of not having healthcare available, you know, Medicare or Medicaid, free healthcare for everybody, that, you know, that we have to pay for these things that every other developing country has. And we're supposedly the richest country, and yet we don't provide that for the citizens. You know, this country doesn't provide that for the citizens. It is absurd.
Yep.
And he highlighted that clearly in his jokes.
I think he said 36th of 37, like quality of healthcare. Like that's the ranking, the world ranking of the 37 like top industrialized nations. We're 36.
Oh wow.
But #1 in
We're on
bank.
the bottom.
Yeah, go
bottom of the top.
Yay. No, but I mean, that's the thing, is like, these things just kind of go by unnoticed, or maybe some people get like frumpled about them or something like that. Frumpled is like a new word apparently that I just made up. I'm just going with it. But anyway, you know, whatever. But at the same time, like, it's like you have to stop and say, what I love about what Lee Camp does is that he'll like deadpan, you know what I mean? Be like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. And you're like listening, you're like, this is fucked up. This is fucked up. This is fucked up, until he gets to the end and you're like, oh, okay. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah. So going on, I think throughout, I think it was maybe right after Lee Camp, maybe shortly after, but we had another one of our own. So Cheryl Van Epps is one of our volunteers, and then another one of our volunteers is Jeffrey Ginter, and he's, I mean, yeah, I don't know if you know, but I know that every time Jeff puts something out, I listen and I make sure that I read it, because he's a very thoughtful person, and I love the way that he expresses it, because he's able to express it in such a way that it's passionate and it gets you, and he's angry, but angry for a purpose. Like, I don't know if that actually makes sense, but in my mind, it makes a lot of sense, right? I understand like where he's coming from, and so to hear him speak, not only with the experiences that he's gone through, but also with kind of the thoughtfulness that he puts into whatever. I mean, we want to call it a rant. A rant to me sounds like something that is just off the cuff. I don't think that's the way it is with Jeff. I think the way that Jeff speaks, it's based on a lot of things that he has thought through before that. And so
we used to understand in this country that if you wanted something, you had to fight for it, and it had to look like a fight. The suffragettes, the labor movements, the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, the anti-war movement, free speech movement, you name it. They took to the streets. They didn't care who was in power. They didn't worship at the altar of party or politician. Whatever the politician said they wanted, don't care. This is what you're doing. It's never going to happen kindly. It's never going to happen peacefully. We were civil for 50 years. We gave up the mass movements, and we adopted the language of electoral and identity politics. And I'd like to give you a short list of what we got in return. The U.S. is ranked number 36 in the world in access to water and sanitation. 36 out of our peer countries. For anyone that wants to know, that's 36 out of 37. America has the highest incarceration rate in the motherfucking world. In the land of the free, home of the brave, we lock up more people for shit. And the people that do the most harm get elected to Congress. Youth poverty rate in the United States is the highest in the developed world. The OECD says that the U.S. is ranked 35 out of 37 in terms of inequality. You getting a picture? You have to understand the depth of the problem. In 2018, a survey was done that said that white America believes that the wealth disparity between black and white was only 80%. They believed that black wealth was about 80% of that of white. But the U.S. Census Department that same year shows it's 7%. If you can't see the problem, if you don't understand the depth of the problem, you're not going to be motivated to fix the problem. So it is time to understand right here, right now, that people who die because they don't have health care is between 40 to 70,000. And I hear that statistic all the time. That's annually, by the way. Twice today, we have heard people in passing mention that the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical errors in hospitals. What they don't say is the number annually is 225,000 to 440,000 people every year. These are people with health care. These are people who have insurance, who have come smack against the limit of what that insurance will actually pay for, what it will cover, and the result is your death.
I'm curious, what do you guys think about about Jeff's presentation and kind of where that went? Roxanna, what do you think, darling?
Well, obviously he's in the health field, so he gave a perspective from someone that works in the health industry, and his view from that perspective on why we need Medicare for all. So I think he really did a good job pointing those out. Definitely.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I would say he definitely channeled that righteous anger that a lot of people are feeling. And because he's in the healthcare industry, he's probably seen that other side of where, you know, people are told, well, this is the treatment you need or the medicine you need, but your insurance doesn't cover it. It's going to be, you know, X amount of dollars. That's just a ridiculous amount of money for people to have to make that choice of medicine or, you know, basically a financial ruin in some cases. And I think he sees it from that angle and understands that better than a lot of people, how just tragic this system is and how broken it is. And real quick, funny story, when Jeff pulled up, he actually stayed at the Chateau de RP, you know, for the night before the march. And as he pulled up, this giant rat crawled out of the sewer and scurried across the road right in front of our place. And Medicare for All would cover rodent bites too. Shout out to the rat. We can cut that.
Oh my god. That was his welcoming.
Yeah, I think.
I know.
Actually,
welcome to the crew. He has a rat.
Actually, credit to Jeff. He actually commented on the Facebook post I put up there, and he said the rat was trying to get his vote for Congress. So.
Well, you know, when he showed up, you tell me this story, and I was thinking of the why am I blanking on his name right? The Ralph Nader book, you know, the how the rat stole Congress. And I was like, well, apparently they're doing the right thing. I don't know. I haven't read the book yet, so
it was real life.
I'm not sure if the rats are the good guys or the bad guys.
We were there. We seen them.
There you go. We seen it. We done it. And your Patreon dollars supported us doing that. There you go. Okay. And so okay, get to the end of the Medicare for All March. The Medicare for All March is part of a larger movement, right? I think the one thing that really disturbed people was kind of being cut off from that movement and you know, and all these kind of things. But these are all of the things that people need to do to keep it in the public eye, to keep it a conversation that we're having, a conversation that our legislators are having. This is very important. So I think one of the things that we talked about while we were at the Medicare for All March was, what were the demands, right? You come out and you have this large showing. I think at the end of the day, it was 52 different cities.
Final count was 56. I think.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So 56 different cities where people were coming out to say that we need Medicare for all. But at the end of the day, what are their demands? So John, do you want to take it away?
Basically, the petition is stating, and again, if you can, go and sign this petition immediately. If the demands aren't met by August 6th, then they are filing a human rights violation complaint with the United Nations. And those demands are to the United States government to pass improved and expanded Medicare for all immediately, a single-payer healthcare system that is free at the point of service to all Americans, regardless of sex, age, creed, race, religion, gender, identity, citizenship, disability, geographic location, income, and employment status, which includes but not limited to zero copays, zero deductibles, dental, vision, everything that goes on. And I mean, a comprehensive package, too much to go through. Also, number 2, recognize healthcare as a human right for all people, regardless of sex, age, creed, race, religion, gender identity, citizenship, disability, geographic location, income, and employment status. Number 3, prioritize healthcare first in the federal budget, which includes, but not limited to, eliminate medical debt immediately, funding the single-payer healthcare system, funding wellness centers, nutrition centers, and preventative care, improving communities with the least amount of hospitals and clinics, employing more healthcare professionals nationwide, enrolling future doctors and nurses in schools nationwide. So please, if you can, sign this immediately. And we're not holding out hope, but you know, these are the moves we have to make and the pressure we need to put on, frankly.
John, I honestly wish that we had more time at this point to kind of just go through and break down each one of those things, right? Because each one of those things, I feel like it's it's called upon in the last year. Right? It's called upon in the last year of like why this is so important. And yet we still haven't passed Medicare for all. We still haven't, provided not passed Medicare for all, we haven't provided for any of these things even individually. Not like individually would necessarily be any type of step in the right direction. It needs to be comprehensive, but it's amazing that we haven't even learned from our own lessons. We're going right back into the same capitalist-led boat. I can't hear you.
Gosh, I'm sorry. No, I was just saying that, well, at least Biden extended COBRA for 6 months, right?
Oh, yay. Cool. Because people pay for COBRA and they pay a shit ton for COBRA, right? So that's
the neoliberal fix.
Right. Yes. There you go.
Here,
let me give you a better way to spend your money, and it's going to be more, and you're going to get less for it. Yay, neolibs.
I think this is why it's so crucial that people understand MMT and they understand how things are paid for, because there's just it always seems to be the holdup, that all this stuff seems like expensive or something. Even though it's cheaper than what we're currently doing. I think if people knew that, it's not about the money, it's about, building hospitals in underserved areas and like making, medical school free. So even poor people can go and not be buried in debt afterwards and stuff like that, to improve the infrastructure and not just like, we don't have money to spend on healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah. When I spoke with a few people that were there to support the cause, and many of them had still the myth and the notion of, this is going to be paid with our tax dollars. And I'm like, no, that's a myth. That's not how federal funding works. And I was like, if you go to our page, and I had to direct them to our, what is it? Real Progress in Action. Am I saying it right? YouTube channel, right?
Mm-hmm.
To learn about MMT. I told them that we do a lot of education on economics and how these programs can be funded,
Yeah.
and taxes don't fund these programs. So they were
right.
like, oh.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think what's most frustrating for me about like the conversation, and I'm sure that there are some other people out there who would identify, is having a conversation on false premises. Like here is logic. You have premise 1, premise 2, you have the logical conclusion. If these things don't fit, then they're not sound, whatever. The thing is that without even putting it into that perspective, the fact is that you have a false premise. You have something that is not true. And so here's the thing. I think that a lot of people take it as, well, but it still works, right? But we still want to say, well, if I'm, I don't want to spend on this, I want to spend on this, right? So like they want to make it this, what's the word? One or the other, right? It has to be black or white. It has to be this or this. We're either going to spend it on this or we're going to spend it on this. And it's like, but the whole time when you're buying into that conversation, when you're buying into that explanation, you're giving people an out in another situation. Like I understand where the impulse comes from to say, I don't want to spend on war. I want to spend on people. Damn right. Me too. That's exactly what I want to do. Except for the fact that when we make it this conversation where we say, oh, well, I want to take my money from this and put it to this, we put ourselves in a fucked up position. We put ourselves in we handicap ourselves in other situations because we've accepted a lie. We've accepted a premise that is a lie. So it's very hard to get that across. And I'm going to be honest, I think people get really frustrated with it. I get really frustrated with it because I don't think people necessarily understand the damage that it does accepting this framing when it comes to other things. It may seem like it's okay in certain situations, but extrapolated out, and you have put yourself in a messed up situation because you've accepted this lie. My words are going into one another, so I don't know if they make sense anymore, but you guys,
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, man. No, you're absolutely right. And again, it's just, I guess the idea, it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around that, like the scarce resource isn't money. Money's the one thing we have an unlimited supply of, and we could spend it like that. And I think most people are used to how their household budget works, and they need to scrimp and save and find the dollars first. And if they have to borrow them, they have to worry about paying them back with interest and things like that, to where they don't think in a grander scope, like, it's not how you pay for it, it's how you resource it. Make sure instead of giving people a handful of money and saying, hey, go buy healthcare, why don't we spend money on building hospitals in underserved areas, or making sure there's enough doctors to cover everyone, and then they give them the resources.
My thing with the funding is that we can also talk about imperialism, U.S. imperialism, how the United States, the federal government, uses federal funds to fund these organizations and send money to these organizations that create havoc and chaos, in different countries, with that purpose, with using that CIA soft law manual, they're funded with federal funds. So my thing is like, nobody, I don't see people on the street saying, I don't want my money going to that. They're talking about, I don't want my taxes going to that. No, but the federal money is going to that other thing, but you don't worry about that.
Yeah.
You just worry about everybody else not having health care. You don't want money going to that.
Yep.
It's like,
because that it's a balance sheet. It's like, oh, well, if this is going to this, and this is going to this. It's like, really know what are our priorities. What are our priorities? What do we think that is a priority for not only Americans, but for like humans, right? Like, what do we think that if we are civilized enough to be able to make sure that people are taken care of, then what is our
good health?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, where are the priorities? Are the priorities in taking down other countries, or taking care of our citizens to have good health?
Yep.
Where's the priority? That's where the outrage should be, for people out there, talking about there's no money for that. No, there is money.
Totally right. Totally right. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'm not only thank you for coming on tonight, but thank you for coming to DC, because I had so much fun. I think, I mean, I would say hanging out with y'all, but we also did like a lot of actual work. And trying to make sure that has things down, and yeah, I think it turned out pretty well. I hope that you guys that you in the audience enjoy the footage that we were able to get that day, and I hope that you on the panel, I hope that we get to meet up together again soon. It was amazing.
I think we almost
definitely. I would love that.
make a good team. You guys are legit comrades.
Woo, woo.
Yes.
RP, woo, woo. All right.
Right.
See, never bring me anywhere, guys. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have the opportunity, like I said, I guess I'm just going to take a little bit more time tonight than I usually do to say, we want to do more live streaming. We want to be on the ground more. And if you support us more, we are able to do that more. So thank you so much for what you've provided so far. And if you are able to, please support us more if you can, now and in the future, because we'd really like to be bringing you the things that are happening on the ground that mainstream media doesn't want to cover. So cheers, y'all.
Well, yeah. Adios.